was having a perfectly normal day when I decided to do one nice thing for a stranger. That was my first mistake. I was waiting at a bus stop when a guy next to me started aggressively patting his pockets. You could tell immediately, wallet panic. He sighed, looked at the bus schedule, and muttered, "Great, just great." Trying to be helpful, I asked if everything was okay. He said he had forgotten his wallet at home and needed exact change for the bus. Without thinking too much, I pulled out some cash and said, "Don't worry, I've got you." His face lit up like I had just solved all his problems in life. He thanked me about 5 times and promised he'd pay it forward. The bus arrived, we both got on, and I thought that was the end of it. It was not. About 2 stops later, he leaned over and said, "Hey, since you helped me already, can I ask you something else?" That sentence should come with a warning label. He explained that he was running late for work and asked if I could switch seats with him because he felt more productive on the left side of the bus. I didn't understand how that worked, but I switched seats anyway. Then he asked if I could watch his bag while he made a phone call. Then if I could remind him when his stop was coming. Then if I could tell him whether his boss sounded mad in a text message he received. At this point, I was no longer a stranger. I was his assistant. When his stop finally came, he stood up, grabbed his bag, and said, "Man, today really worked out." And then he paused. He looked at me and said, "Actually, my stop is still 2 blocks away. Any chance you could get off here and walk with me?" I laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. I told him no, and his smile faded instantly. He nodded slowly and said, "Guess kindness has limits." Then he stepped off the bus. I sat there in silence, replaying the entire interaction in my head, trying to figure out how I somehow became the bad guy. Later that day, I realized something important. Helping people is great, but if you're not careful, you don't help a stranger, you accidentally adopt one.
Yeah, next time I'm helping someone, it's going to be myself.
I woke up that morning feeling unusually positive. One of those rare days where you think, today I'm going to be a good person. No complaints, no negativity, just kindness. That attitude lasted about 12 minutes. It started at the coffee shop. The guy in front of me was arguing with the cashier because his card wasn't working. The line was growing, people were sighing, and the tension was thick. Trying to be nice, I said, "Don't worry, I'll pay for it." Everyone looked at me like I had just performed a miracle. The guy thanked me way too much, like future best friend levels of gratitude. He stood next to me while we waited and started talking about his job, then his boss, then his boss's personality problems, then his boss's childhood trauma. I nodded politely, wondering how much kindness costs in emotional currency. When our drinks were ready, I grabbed mine and said goodbye. He followed me outside. That's when I realized this wasn't a conversation anymore, this was a commitment. As we walked, he said, "You're easy to talk to." That sentence is dangerous. At the crosswalk, he asked if I knew any good places to eat nearby. I named one. He said, "Oh, perfect, I was headed that way." He was not headed that way. We walked together. Then he asked if I liked my job. Then if I believed people were naturally good. Then if I thought free will was real. I had accidentally signed up for a podcast. At the restaurant, he stood there staring at the menu. He said, "Since you already helped me today, do you think you could help me decide?" That turned into me explaining the entire menu, item by item. When he finally ordered, he looked relieved and said, "Man, today really turned around because of you." I smiled weakly. As we sat down, he leaned in and said, "I know this might sound weird. It always does." He asked if I could watch his phone while he went to the restroom. I agreed. He was gone for a suspiciously long time, long enough that the waiter came back twice, long enough that I started wondering if I now legally owned this phone. When he returned, he thanked me again and said, "You're really trustworthy." I had known this man for 27 minutes. Halfway through his meal, he asked if I could taste his food to make sure it was good. I did. I don't know why I did. Then his phone rang. He answered it and said, "Yeah, I'm eating with a friend." A friend. After lunch, I tried to leave. He stood up too. He said, "I'm actually walking this way." So was I. On the sidewalk, he slowed down and said, "Hey, do you mind if I tell you something personal?" I minded, but I nodded. What followed was the most detailed life story I've ever heard, including mistakes, regrets, and a surprisingly long section about his ex's dog. When we reached my building, I stopped. I said, "Well, this is me." He looked at the building, then at me, then said, "Oh, wow, I live 2 blocks from here." I stared at him. He smiled and said, "Guess we're basically neighbors." That's when I finally did something brave. I said, "I really need to go." He nodded, disappointed, and said, "Yeah, I understand. People get busy." Then he added, "Anyway, thanks for today. You really helped me a lot." I went inside, locked the door, and leaned against it. I had tried to be kind. Instead, I had almost adopted a full adult human.
Yeah, being helpful is great, but next time I'm setting boundaries.